At 0632 local time, 12 Ukrainian UJ-26 Beaver drones were approaching a Russian airbase in occupied Crimea to destroy Mi-8 helicopters. The mission had been routine so far, 47 minutes of flight time across the Black Sea without incident. That would all change in the next 10 seconds. Unknown to the Ukrainians, the drone formation lit up on Russian screens like a small flock of birds. Too slow for missiles, too fast for actual birds, flying too straight for seagulls. The radar operator knew exactly what he was looking at. Within 4 seconds, all 12 drones were tumbling through the sky like leaves in a hurricane. Their tight formation turned into complete chaos. The Ukrainian operators watched their screens flash warning after warning: navigation failure, position unknown, altitude uncertain. The Russians had just activated their electronic warfare network, starting with the Pol-21. But instead of trying to physically destroy the drones, they were attacking their minds. The navigation computers were being fed impossible data, telling them they were underground 1 second, in space the next, somehow flying backwards while moving forward. This is because GPS satellites are like speakers, each sending a unique pattern that tells you exactly where you are. The satellites broadcast at about 1/4,000,000th of a watt, so by the time the signal reaches Earth, it's so weak the drones need perfect silence to hear them. The Krasukha is like a giant rock concert speaker. It creates fake signals, broadcasting them 20 billion times stronger than the real ones. The drone's receivers lock onto these lies because they're louder than the real GPS signals. The Ukrainian operator watching this chaos had about 10 seconds before his drones flew into the sea or each other. He switched to INS, inertial navigation, which doesn't need any outside signals. It works by measuring every tiny acceleration and adding them up to track movement. Like walking at night in your house when the lights are on. You might find the path, but it's very hard to navigate. Problem is, small errors add up fast. These units drift 50 meters every minute, so by the time they'd reach the target, they could miss the entire airbase. But it worked. The drones stopped tumbling, reformed into rough groups of 3, and continued toward Crimea. They'd lost 2 drones to collision in the chaos, leaving 10 still flying. The Ukrainian operators breathed a quiet sigh of relief, but this was just the opening act. The Krasukha 4 operator watched his screen with satisfaction as the drones reformed and continued inbound. Perfect. They'd taken the bait. He picked up the phone to Pol-21 station 7 kilometers away. Time for Phase 2. Here's where things get interesting. The Krasukha 4 is designed differently than the Pol-21. Instead of attacking navigation, it jams the control link, the invisible thread between operator and the Beaver drone. Most military drones talk to their operators on 2.4 or 5.8 gigahertz, the same frequencies as Wi-Fi. The Krasukha floods these channels with signals that look exactly like real commands, but contain only garbage. 7 minutes after the GPS attack, the Ukrainian screens went dark. The first video turned to static, pixelated blocks of nothing. Then the control input stopped working. Push the stick left, nothing. Pull back, nothing. The telemetry showed all 10 Beaver drones continuing straight on their last heading, completely ignoring their operators. This is because the Pol-21 was transmitting fake command packets that looked legitimate to Beaver drones' receivers. Each packet had the right headers, the right encryption signatures, even the right timing. But the actual commands were random noise. The drone's computers were wasting all their processing power trying to decode messages that meant nothing. The Russians knew exactly what would happen next. Western drones have fail-safes, lose connection for 30 seconds, and they automatically turn around and fly home. It's meant to prevent your own drones from plowing into your own equipment and people. The countdown for the Beavers had started. Just 20 seconds until the failsafe triggered. The lead operator faced an impossible choice. He could let the drones return home, or he could activate their backup system, pre-programmed waypoints. This would turn them into cruise missiles that follow a route uploaded before launch, but they'd lose all control and couldn't abort if something went wrong. 15 seconds. The operator knew the Russians were listening, waiting for the drones to turn around. 10 seconds. The pilot flipped the emergency protocol switch, converting 10 remote-controlled aircraft into autonomous weapons. The drone's onboard computers took over, following coordinates burned into their memory before launch. They would then fly to specific GPS points saved when the satellite still worked, then use their cameras to find targets that looked like helicopters. 5 seconds to failsafe. The screen stayed black, but telemetry confirmed the mode change. The Beaver drones flew on into electronic darkness, now immune to any further jamming, but also beyond any human control. They had 41 minutes of fuel and absolutely no way to change their coordinates if the Russians had moved those helicopters. The 10 Beaver drones flew on through the darkness for another 12 minutes, their cameras uselessly recording the sky while their simple computers counted down kilometers to the target. At 0651 hours, they crossed an invisible line 40 kilometers from the Crimean coast, and everything changed. A Pantsir S-1 battery stationed near Yevpatoria had just picked them up. The Pantsir's radar operator watched 10 small contacts appear on his screen, moving at 180 kilometers per hour, 500 meters altitude. The system immediately classified them as probable UAVs based on their radar cross-section, about the size of a large bird, but flying too straight, too steady, and in groups. The engagement computer started calculating firing solutions while the radar shifted from search to track mode, focusing its beam on the lead group of drones. This is where the Pantsir S-1 excels. Unlike older systems that mechanically swing a radar dish around, the Pantsir uses a phased array. Imagine a flat panel covered in a grid of 7,000 tiny antennas, each no bigger than your thumb. The antenna sends out its radio waves slightly delayed from its neighbor, like doing the wave at a stadium, but with electromagnetic energy. When all 7,000 waves combine, they create a focused beam that can sweep left, right, up, or down instantly without the panel moving at all. The radar sends out a pulse that expands like an invisible cone, hits the drone, bounces back, and the time delay tells the system exactly how far away the target is. By sweeping this beam 50 times per second, the computer builds a precise picture of speed, altitude, and direction. The system takes exactly 12 seconds from detection to missile launch, 4 seconds to confirm the track, 3 seconds to calculate the intercept point, where the target will be, not where it is, 2 seconds to warm up the missile's electronics, and 3 seconds for the commander to authorize engagement. The operator watched his countdown, knowing the drones had no idea they were even being hunted. But the Ukrainian drones did something unexpected at 32 kilometers from the coast. They dove. Not a gentle descent, but a near vertical plunge toward the water. The Pantsir operator watched them drop from 500 meters to just 5 meters above the waves in about 8 seconds. This wasn't random. It was programmed. The Prymary unit knew exactly where the Russian radars were positioned and had coded evasive maneuvers to trigger at specific distances. At 5 meters altitude, the Pantsir operator watched his previously clean radar display turn into chaos. Each drone appeared as 2 targets, one flying just above the water, another impossibly flying beneath it. The tracking computer kept switching between them, unable to decide which was real. Range calculations jumped wildly between accurate and double the actual distance. This maneuver worked because when radar waves hit the water, they bounce. These reflections create a mirror image of the target below the surface. The $1 million Pantsir was now struggling to separate real targets from ghost echoes. The radar operator tried switching frequencies, adjusting filters, boosting power. Drones stayed low, skimming waves, occasionally dipping so close that spray splashed their cameras. The tracking solution kept breaking and reforming. The Pantsir computer couldn't maintain a solid lock long enough to guarantee a hit. But the drones couldn't stay at wavetop height. 8 kilometers ahead, the Crimean coast rose into 50-meter cliffs. Flying straight meant climbing, and climbing meant becoming visible again. As soon as the lead drone pulled up to clear the cliffs, the Pantsir had its shot. The operator squeezed the trigger, and 2 57 E-6 missiles roared off their launcher. Then 2 more. Then another pair. 6 missiles total, accelerating to Mach 3 in under 2 seconds. The 57 E-6 missiles you see here screaming towards them are 2-stage, meaning a booster that burns for 2 seconds to get it up to speed. then a sustainer that maintains velocity for the 12-second flight. The warhead doesn't need a direct hit. It's surrounded by 5,000 tungsten cubes that spray outward like a shotgun blast when the proximity fuse triggers. At Mach 3, a cube the size of a dime will shred a drone. The missiles initially flew on radar command guidance, the Pantsir's radar tracking both missiles and targets, radioing course corrections. But at 2 kilometers from intercept, each missile's own radar activated. These seekers, the size of a dinner plate, started hunting independently. The drones were now being chased by 6 intelligent predators that could think faster than any human operator. The Ukrainian Beaver drones executed their only defense: pure chaos. They pulled vertical, climbing straight up like rockets. The missiles, traveling 3 times faster, couldn't match the turn radius. Physics is brutal at Mach 3. Even a slight turn creates crushing G-forces. The missiles overshot, their seekers frantically trying to reacquire targets that had suddenly disappeared below them. The momentum is unforgiving. The drone's climb reduced speed rapidly. At the peak, they were nearly hovering, completely vulnerable. The missile's proximity fuses should have triggered, filling the sky with tungsten. They didn't. The missiles had been programmed with a minimum altitude setting to prevent them from detonating near the ground and damaging friendly assets. The drones had climbed just high enough to clear this floor, then dove back down before the missiles could recalculate. $6 million interceptors splashed harmlessly into the Black Sea. The Pantsir operator screamed something that didn't translate well into English. His battery needed 90 seconds to reload, but the drones would be over the coast in 40. He grabbed the radio to warn the next defensive line while simultaneously engaging with his backup weapon. 2 30mm autocannons. Tracers started filling the sky. But hitting a small target at 2 kilometers with guns is like trying to swat a fly with a garden hose. 9 Beaver drones made it through. 1 had clipped the cliff during the sudden evasion. They were now over Crimean soil, racing toward the airbase at treetop height. The Russian integrated air defense network was fully awake, and something much more dangerous than missiles was about to join the hunt. The 9 surviving Beaver drones had been flying unmolested for 6 minutes since clearing the coastal defenses. Their simple computers following the pre-programmed route toward the airbase. At 06:59 hours, something rose from behind a ridgeline 2 kilometers ahead, a black shape against the morning sky, moving with predatory purpose. The helicopter had launched from Dankoy Air Base 7 minutes earlier after the coastal radar stations reported the drone's breakthrough. The pilot flew at 50 meters altitude, using terrain masking, positioning himself directly in the drone's path. The gunner activated the OPS-28 thermal sight, and immediately 9 bright white dots appeared on his screen, the drone engines, glowing like flares against the cold morning air. The Mi-28N is purpose-built for exactly this kind of hunt. The N stands for Nokhnoi, night, and this helicopter owns the darkness. Its thermal sight can spot a human from 8 kilometers away or a vehicle engine from 12. These drones, with their small engines running at 200 degrees Celsius, stood out like light bulbs at 3 kilometers. The gunner slaved the 30mm cannon to the thermal sight and started tracking the lead drone. But something strange happened. Instead of continuing straight toward the airbase, the drone suddenly scattered. 3 groups of 3, spreading out in different directions like a flock of birds avoiding a hawk. This wasn't panic. It was programmed. The primary unit had anticipated helicopter interception and had coded the drones to recognize the specific thermal signature of rotorcraft, the hot turbine exhaust pointing downward, the rotor disc creating a distinctive heat pattern. The pilot had to choose, follow one group and let others through, or try to engage all of them in sequence. He chose the middle group. These were heading most directly toward the helicopter storage area where the targets waited. The Mi-28N banked hard, its rotor blades biting the air, accelerating to 270 kilometers per hour to close the distance. The helicopter positioned itself between the drones and their target, trying to herd them away from the base. It's a classic aerial shepherd maneuver. Use your presence to force the enemy where you want them. The pilot expected the drones to turn away, to seek an alternative route. They didn't. They flew straight at him. That's when he fired several S-8 missiles from his rocket pod. The lead drone flew straight past the missiles and kept coming. Then the second, then the third. The gunner stared at his screen in disbelief. This is because the S-8 has a minimum safe arming distance of 1,300 meters. Get within that bubble and the missiles explode harmlessly behind you, which is exactly what the decoys did. Meanwhile, the other 6 drones in 2 groups were pulling away, using the helicopter's distraction to continue toward the base. The pilot realized he'd been played. The middle group was bait, drawing them away while the real attack proceeded. The Mi-28N pilot made a command decision. Forget the 3 bait drones. Go after the 6 heading for the base. He pulled maximum power, the twin Isotov turbines screaming as the helicopter accelerated to its maximum speed of 300 kilometers per hour. The helicopter's nose dipped forward, trading altitude for speed, closing in on the fleeing drones. The gunner switched back to the 30mm cannon, specifically selecting proximity-fused ammunition. These shells contain tiny radar fuses that detect when they pass near a target and detonate, spraying fragments in a sphere. Each shell has a miniature radar transmitter in its nose that sends out radio pulses. When those pulses bounce back quickly enough, it means something is close, triggering the explosion. You don't need a direct hit, just close enough for government work. The first burst walked across the sky, explosions creating black puffs every few meters. The drone started jinking, random changes in altitude and direction every 2 seconds. But the OPS-28 thermal sight combined with the helicopter's ballistic computer could predict their movement patterns. The system calculated lead angles, drop rates, even wind drift. The gunner just had to keep the crosshairs on target and let the computer do the math. Shrapnel sparked off the lead drone's camera housing. Another fragment punched through its left wing, creating a hole the size of a coin. The drone wobbled but kept flying. These Ukrainian drones had redundant control surfaces. Damage one and the others compensate. You'd need to literally blow them apart to stop them. Then the drones did something insane. They turned and flew directly at the helicopter again, closing the distance rapidly. The gunner tried to track them, but they passed under the helicopter's nose into the blind spot beneath the chin turret. For 3 seconds, the Mi-28N couldn't engage. Its weapons couldn't depress enough to hit targets directly below. The drones used those 3 seconds to fly straight into the helicopter's rotor wash, the hurricane of disturbed air beneath the rotor disc. The turbulence was insane, throwing the lightweight drones around like leaves. But that same turbulence made them impossible to predict or target. The gunner's targeting computer couldn't calculate a firing solution on objects moving so erratically. The pilot pulled up sharply, trying to regain visual contact. As the helicopter climbed, the gunner reacquired the drones on thermal. They were now just 1 kilometer from the base perimeter, flying lower than ever, using every fold in the terrain for cover. The gunner fired one last long burst, emptying his magazine in a desperate attempt to stop them. Tracers filled the pre-dawn sky like deadly fireworks. One drone took a direct hit and disintegrated. Another lost half its wing and spiraled into the ground. But 7 made it through, racing toward the base boundary at maximum speed. The pilot radioed a warning to the base defenses while turning to rearm and refuel. As he looked back, he saw something that gave him goosebumps. The 3 bait drones he'd ignored earlier were also approaching the base from the opposite direction. It had all been choreographed: the split, the chase, and even flying through the rotor wash. The Ukrainians had gamed out the entire engagement. 10 drones had become 7, but those 7 were now seconds from the base perimeter, approaching from multiple angles, and the base was now scrambling to stop them. The 7 drones crossed the base perimeter at 0701 hours, flying so low they had to pull up to clear the fence. That's when every light on the base snapped on at once. Searchlights blazed from towers, sirens wailed, and on every rooftop, every guard tower, every defense position, Russian soldiers were raising their weapons. The base commander ordered everyone that could shoot to fire at will, regardless of normal safety procedures. On the base, 2 IGLA MANPADS teams were already tracking targets through thermal sights. These shoulder-fired missiles are heat seekers, designed to home in on aircraft engines. At the gate, a Zu-23 anti-aircraft gun swiveled toward the incoming drones, its twin barrels capable of firing 400 rounds per minute. The problem with throwing everything at a target is that you risk hitting your own assets. But with 7 drones converging on helicopter parking areas, the commander decided friendly fire was an acceptable risk. He grabbed his radio and announced what roughly translates to "weapons free. Shoot anything that flies." The first Igla operator acquired a perfect lock. The missile seeker head, cooled by compressed nitrogen gas, picked up the lead drone's engine heat at 800 meters. The distinctive tone in his earpiece changed from growling to a steady high pitch, which means a good lock. He squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. Then he remembered. Minimum arming distance. The Igla won't detonate closer than 500 meters to protect the shooter from his own missile. The drones were already too close. Then the Zu-23 opened up, its barrels strobing in alternating fire. These are brutal weapons, 23mm explosive shells originally designed to shred aluminum aircraft. Each shell contains 11 grams of explosive that detonates on impact. The gunner walked his fire across the lead drone's path, creating a curtain of explosions. But hitting something the size of a coffee table moving at 50 meters per second at 600 meters distance is about as difficult as stopping calls about your car's extended warranty. The base defenders had one last card to play. A BTR-82A armored vehicle roared around the corner, its 30mm automatic cannon already tracking. This wasn't designed for anti-aircraft work, but desperation makes innovators out of everyone. The gunner elevated his cannon to maximum angle and started firing airburst rounds, trying to create a wall of shrapnel between the drones and their targets. The drones were now 200 meters from the helicopter parking area. 150 meters. 100 meters. Their simple computers were making final calculations, choosing specific aim points. Unlike human pilots who might hesitate at the last second, these machines had no concept of self-preservation. They would complete their mission or cease to exist. There was no third option. 50 meters. The defenders could actually see the drones now. Dark shapes against the searchlights, moving with inhuman precision. 20 meters. A soldier with a rifle managed to put a long burst into a drone's wing, sending it tumbling. 6 drones left. 10 meters. The thermal cameras filled with the heat signatures of their targets. 5 meters. The onboard computers made their final choice of impact points, selecting the most vulnerable spots their algorithms could identify. In the next 3 seconds, months of planning would meet reality. The first drone slammed into Mi-8 No. 1 at 197 kilometers per hour, hitting the fuel tank just behind the crew compartment. The tank contained 1,450 liters of aviation kerosene. The impact ruptured the tank instantly, spraying fuel in a fine mist that ignited on contact with the drone's hot engine. Before anyone could react, the second drone hit Mi-8 No. 2. This helicopter was configured for ground attack with 4 B-8V-20 rocket pods, each containing 20 S-8 rockets. The drone's impact detonated the warhead of one rocket, which set off a chain reaction. 80 rockets started cooking off in sequence, not launching, but exploding in place. The third drone found the Nebo-U radar array, specifically targeting the base of the antenna structure. The 55ZH-6U is built on a truck chassis with the antenna array mounted on hydraulic lifts. The drone hit the hydraulic reservoir, rupturing it and spraying fluid everywhere. The entire structure, 12 meters tall and weighing several tons, toppled like a falling tree, crushing its own control cabin. The third helicopter didn't just burn, it detonated. This Ma-8 was configured for transport, but its cargo bay contained ammunition being delivered to forward positions. Crates of rifle rounds, grenades, and mortar shells added their own contribution to the catastrophe. The explosions became continuous, each setting off more stored munitions, creating a chain reaction that would continue for the next 17 minutes. The fourth and fifth drones, still seeking targets, found none that matched their parameters. Everything was already burning. They defaulted to secondary programming and dove into the largest heat source they could detect, the growing inferno that used to be the helicopter parking area. Their impacts were almost unnoticed in the greater devastation. The Prymary unit had just demonstrated that for the price of approximately 300,000 McChicken sandwiches, Russia is biting off more than it can chew in Ukraine. Bye for now.